Mitro, Namaskar. Welcome to my show, Facts and Figures. Today in this program, I'll take you through the Arab-Israel conflict. We all keep talking and hearing about this age-old war. This conflict is primordial. So let me start with the religious aspects of this conflict. And I'm sure you must have heard all these words like Gaza Strip, West Bank. So all these terminologies will be covered in this particular program. Friends, the contemporary history of the Arab-Israeli conflict is very much affected or influenced by the religious beliefs of the two sides and their views of the idea of the chosen people. Now, what is chosen people? Throughout history, various groups of people have considered themselves to be the chosen people or a deity's extension on earth. In monotheistic faiths, that believes in one and only one God. References to God are used in constructs such as chosen people. In this context, it is their policies with regard to the promised land and the chosen city of Jerusalem. The land of Canaan or Eretz Israel, which is spelled as Eretzhisrael, that is, land of Israel, was according to the Hebrew Bible promised by God to the children of Israel. This is also mentioned in the Quran, Surah 17, in the night journey verse. In this, the 1896 manifesto, the Jewish states, Theodor Herzl repeatedly refers to the biblical promised land concept. Theodor Herzl is a Jewish Hungarian journalist, playwright, political activist, and a writer who was the father of the modern Zionism and formed the Zionist organization. Likud, Likud. Likud is currently the most prominent Israeli political party to include the biblical claim to the land of Israel in its platform. Muslims also claim rights to that land in accordance with the Quran, contrary to the Jewish claim that this land was promised only to the descendants of Abraham's grandson Jacob, that is, Israel. Just for reference, Abraham is the common patriarch of Christianity, Islam, Judaism, and some other religions. In Judaism, religion of the Jews, Abraham is the founding father of the covenant, the agreement, the special relationship between the Hebrews and the God. In Christianity, he is the prototype of all believers. Jacob, the grandson of Abraham, was later given the name Israel and is regarded as the patriarch of Israelites, and so is an important figure in the Abrahamic religions such as Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Jacob first appears in the book of Genesis, the first book of Hebrew Bible, as the son of Isaac and Rebekah and the grandson of Abraham. The Arabs argue that the land of Canaan was promised to what they consider the elder son of Abraham, Ishmael, from whom Arabs claim descent. Additionally, Muslims also revere many sites holy for biblical Israelites, such as the Cave of Patriarchs and the Temple Mount. In the past 1400 years, Muslims have constructed Islamic landmarks on these ancient Israelite sites, such as the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque on the Temple Mount, the holiest site of Judaism. This has brought the two groups into a conflict over the rightful possession of Jerusalem. Muslim teaching is that Muhammad passed through Jerusalem on his first journey to heaven. Then we have Hamas that governs the Gaza Strip. Hamas is a Palestinian Sunni Islamic fundamentalist militant organization. It has a social service wing, Dawa, and the military wing called the Izzat Din al-Qassam Brigades. It has been the de facto governing authority of Gaza Strip since its takeover of that area in 2007. The Gaza Strip, or simply Gaza, is a self-governing Palestinian territory on the eastern coast of the Mediterranean Sea that borders Egypt on the southwest for 11 kilometers and Israel on the east and north along a 51-kilometer border. Gaza and West Bank are cleared by the de jure claims that all of the land of Palestine, which is current Israeli and Palestinian territories, is an Islamic waqf that must be governed by the Muslims. Now let's come to the Christian Zionists. Christian Zionism is a belief among some Christians that the return of the Jews to the Holy Land and the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948 were in accordance with the Bible prophecy. The term began to be used in the mid-20th century, superseding Christian restorationism that often supports the State of Israel because of the ancestral right of the Jews to the Holy Land, as suggested, for instance, by the Apostle Paul. Paul the Apostle, commonly known as Saint Paul, and also known by his Hebrew name Saul of Taurus, was an apostle, that is a disciple of Jesus, who taught the gospel of Christ to the first century world. Paul is generally considered one of the most important figures of the apostolic age. In his letter to the Romans in chapter 11 of the Bible, Christian Zionism teaches that the return of Jews to Israel is a prerequisite for the second coming of the Christ. The roots of the modern Arab-Israeli conflict lie in the rise of Zionism and the reactionary Arab nationalism that arose in response to Zionism towards the end of the 19th century. Territory regarded by the Jewish people as their historical homeland is also regarded by the Pan-Arab movement as historically and presently belonging to the Palestinian Arabs. Before World War I, the Middle East, including Palestine, later Mandatory Palestine, a geopolitical entity established in 1920 and 1948 in the region of Palestine under the terms of the Mandate for Palestine, had been under the control of the Ottoman Empire for nearly 400 years. During the closing years of their empire, the Ottomans began to espouse their Turkish ethnic identity, asserting that the primacy of Turks within the empire, leading to discrimination against Arabs. The promise of liberation from the Ottomans led many Jews and Arabs to support the Allied powers during the World War I, leading to the emergence of widespread Arab nationalism. Both Arab nationalism and Jewish Zionism had their formulative beginning in Europe. The Zionist Congress was established in Basel, Switzerland in 1897, while the Arab Club was established in Paris in 1906. In the late 19th century, European and Middle Eastern Jewish communities began to increasingly immigrate to Palestine and purchase land from the local Ottoman landlords. The population of the late 19th century in Palestine reached 6 lakhs, mostly Muslim Arabs, but also significant minorities of Jews, Christians, Druze, a kind of a sect of Islam, and some Samaritans and Baha'is. At the time, Jerusalem did not extend beyond the walled area and had a population of only few tens of thousands. A communal settlement called kibbutz were established, as was the first entirely Jewish city, Tel Aviv, in modern times. During 1915 and 1916, as the World War I was underway, the British High Commissioner in Egypt, Sir Henry McMahon, secretly corresponded with Hussein ibn Ali, the patriarch of Hashemite family, the Jordan royals, and Ottoman governor of Mecca and Medina. McMahon convinced Hussein to lead an Arab revolt against the Ottoman Empire, which was aligned with Germany against Britain and France in the war. McMahon promised that if the Arabs supported Britain in the war, the British government would support the establishment of an independent Arab state under Hashemite rule in the Arab provinces of Ottoman Empire, including Palestine. The Arab revolt led by T.E. Lawrence, or Lawrence of Arabia, and Hussein's son Faisal was successful in defeating the Ottomans, and Britain took control over much of its area. The Arab-Israel War of 1948 broke out when 5 Arab nations invaded the territory in the former Palestinian Mandate immediately following the announcement of the independence of the State of Israel on May 14, 1948. In 1947 and again on May 14, 1948, the United States offered a de facto recognition of the Israeli provincial government, but during the war, the United States maintained an arms embargo against all belligerents. On November 29, 1947, the United Nations General Assembly adopted Resolution 181, also known as the Partition Resolution, that would divide Great Britain's former Palestinian mandate into Jewish and Arab states in May 1948. Under the resolution, the area of religious significance surrounding Jerusalem would remain under international control administered by United Nations. The Palestinian Arabs refused to recognize this arrangement, which they regarded as favorable to the Jews and unfair to the Arab population that would remain in Jewish territory under the partition. The United States sought a middle way by supporting the United Nations resolution, but also encouraged negotiations between Arab and Jews in the Middle East. The United Nations resolution sparked conflict between Jews and Arab groups within Palestine. Fighting began with attacks by irregular bands of Palestinian Arabs attached to local units of the Arab Liberation Army, composed of volunteers from Palestine and neighboring Arab countries. These groups launched their attacks against Jewish cities, settlements, and armed forces. The Jewish forces were composed of the Haganah, the underground militia of the Jewish community in Palestine, and two small irregular groups, the Irgun and Lehi. The goal of Arabs was initially to block the partition resolution and to prevent the establishment of the Jewish state. The Jews, on the other hand, hoped to gain control over the territory allotted to them under the partition plan. After Israel declared its independence on May 14, 1948, the fighting intensified, with other Arab forces joining the Palestinian Arabs in attacking the territory in the former Palestinian Mandate. On the eve of May 14, the Arabs launched an air attack on Tel Aviv, which the Israelis resisted. This action was followed by the invasion of the former Palestinian Mandate by Arab armies from Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Egypt. Even Saudi Arabia sent a formation that fought under the Egyptian command. British trained forces from the Transjordan eventually intervened in the conflict, but only in the areas that had been designated as part of the Arab state under the United Nations partition plan and the Corpus Separatum of Jerusalem in 1947. After tense early fighting, Israeli forces now under joint command were able to gain the offensive. Though the United Nations brokered two ceasefires during the conflict, fighting continued in 1949. Israel and the Arab states did not reach any formal armistice agreements until February. These armistice lines were held until 1967. The United States did not become directly involved with the armistice negotiations, but hoped that instability in the Middle East would not interfere with the international balance of power between the Soviet Union and of those times and the United States. So friends, this was a brief history of the Arab-Israel war that has been going on for a very long period of time, and I really cannot go beyond this because of paucity of time, and hope you like the show. Goodbye and see you soon.